Hello, everyone. This is Jamie Flinchbaugh, your host of People Solve Problems, and I'm here with guest Scott Post. Scott, how you doing?
Hey, good morning. I'm doing great.
Well, it's great to have you here. As a way of introduction, you run S Post Consulting. I don't know where you came up with that name, but yeah, I have similar inspiration in my work.
Yeah.
So you're an operational excellence and lean leadership coach with 20 years of experience in leadership, lean, process improvement, and problem solving. You love to help leaders discover and recognize systemic issues and waste and processes that hold individuals and organizations from reaching their full potential. So a man after my own heart. It's very similar to how I think about what I do. So I appreciate all of that. So you've had work inside companies, and now you do, this consulting work, which is a bit different, but it's given you a chance to go see, a lot more companies and a lot more stuff.
Mhm.
So with all you've seen and done and experienced, maybe we can start with, can you share experience of what you could consider poorly done problem solving, and really what you learned from that experience?
Yeah, there's all kinds of examples of poorly done problem solving. For me, I think to summarize what is poorly done is usually poorly defined or a misunderstood problem. And the one example, and I'm going to keep it a little bit vague in terms of the company, but it was a product design issue that was attached to emotions to some leaders in the organization. And I watched that problem while I was with them, and I've heard it for years afterwards where that they're still solving that same problem. But the clarity I've seen over those years is they're not asking the right questions, right? And they keep jumping to conclusions or don't, jumping to solutions that's going to fix it, but they haven't really dove into the nitty gritty. So what is our problem here?
Yeah. Well,
A lot of vagueness and ambiguity, and it's yeah, it's just disheartening to see them spin their wheels
yeah.
unnecessarily.
Well, and that's what can happen, right? You can waste a lot of time. You can eventually get there, right? But you can waste a lot of time, angst, et
Yeah.
cetera. And this is great because it really talks about the front end of problem solving, right? How do we define a problem? How do we understand it? John Dewey once said, "A problem well stated is a problem half solved," which is one of my all-time favorite quotes.
Yes.
Uh,
I like that one too.
now, I want to, without getting into the story itself, more getting into the lessons learned around that. I want to pull on a couple of threads, but let me start with product design, because product design is often. I had Professor Durwood Sobek on the podcast quite a while ago now, but we talked about a lot of product development being open-ended and ill-defined problems, sort of starting that way.
Mhm.
So how do you know, especially in product development, how defined is defined enough, right? How far do you have to get, or how do you get through in product design, maybe better definitions so that you're at least stepping off in the right direction?
Yeah, I think it's ultimately it comes down to the customer, right? And what is usually our products, right? They're solving a problem for our customers. So what is that problem, or what are the design requirements? And and not taking that all the way to truly understand that, right? We should spend 80% of our time really understanding those details and those fundamentals, and then creating the product becomes a lot easier versus doing 20% of understanding, running away, and then realizing I missed something or I missed a feature, that type of thing. So it comes down to the customer and meeting those needs.
Yeah, ultimately they get to decide whether value is
Right.
delivered or not,
Yes.
and they get to vote with their decisions. So we pull on a different thread then. You mentioned this problem was sort of layered with emotion, which is not uncommon, right? It's
Right.
we bring ourselves to work. We have a lot vested in our work. It's not uncommon for emotions to enter the fray, enter the conversation. Do you have tactics or advice for how to either harness emotion in problem solving or remove it or just make sure it doesn't over influence what you're doing? How do you deal with emotion in problem solving?
Yeah, I can't say I'm 100% perfect or an expert at this by any means, and every situation is different. We as human beings are incredibly brilliant, creative, and amazing creatures, but we come with some dysfunction at the same time. And I think for me, what I see is when I worked with Pella Windows, we said, no position or rank. We're all have opinions. We all have perspective. And when that is balanced, I find it to be the most effective. And where I've seen challenges is where someone brings some ego or someone inappropriately uses their position or rank to make a declaration or outweigh someone else. That's when those emotional and interpersonal things come into play on the negative side. On the positive side, I've seen people come in that have a lot of experience on the issue that we're working on and can rightfully pull from that experience and make a declaration and speed things up. But the knack is really understanding when which one is occurring.
Yeah.
And usually it's when egos are in check and we have good teamwork and good relationship and are working on it together that's when you get the positive side.
Yeah. Great. No, I like that. And those things can attribute positive emotions to the experience because of your collaboration, your connection with other people, and even just the spirit of accomplishment and creativity brings positive emotions as well. Um, so let's I won't say switch gears, but let's talk. When you were inside companies, you worked with a lot of individuals. As a consultant, you work with a lot of different companies. How do you go about assessing either the individual, the team, or sometimes even the company, their problem solving capabilities, mentality, all of those types of things? How do you assess that?
With my ears, right? It's a lot of listening, and what I have found to be really effective is the answers or the solutions. They're already there. They're buried and they're hidden or they're confused. And a lot of times companies just need some of clear mind and unattached emotions or disengage from the real nitty-gritties of the day-to-day operations. All those things, as a COO, I understood that fully, right? That firefighting, that reactionary, there's always something going on. But if we want to strategically and systematically achieve a culture of excellence and make significant organizational performance, we got to quiet that noise and see further on. And usually our people, they know exactly what that is and what the right things are, etc. So for me, it's really listening and then trying to bring those different voices together because collectively it meshes. And we just got to have the process to get that to mesh, and then all the I'll say the tricks or the tools of what we've learned in lean, and for me it was through like Kaizen events in my background, which is just basically putting a bunch of different people in a room and using a process to positively mix that all together and create a positive outcome.
I like that. And
But the genius is in here. It's in the brains and the minds that the creative, amazing humans that we are, right? So as a consultant, it's right. How do we bring that out? How do we foster that environment?
yep. Yeah. So you're not there as a, you know, the always question is, as a consultant there to give you the answer, or as a consultant there to extract the answer, and there's value in the latter, right? Sometimes it's like, well, all you did was listen and, you know, tell us what we were saying. Yeah, because you weren't able to do it on your own. That's kind of the key to some of that work, because it's hard. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of things that get in the way and block that progress. Um, but let me ask about listening a bit, because it's one of those things that you know, on any leadership assessment, you know, being able to listen is considered a skill. Like you know, we should be able to do this since we're little, but yet we still assess it as a leadership trait, the ability to listen, which sounds crazy, but it's real because it's hard. Um, does that come naturally to you, or are you just a good natural listener, or did you craft a capability or a personal discipline? How did you come about to achieve being an effective listener?
Yeah, great question. I have been told in the past that I'm a good listener. I don't even know exactly what that means or why someone is a good listener, right? Or I think for me, it's, I don't know, when we believe we have the answer and we stop being curious, that's the fork in the road where things are like, if you're that confident, you should be asking and challenging yourself a little bit. So to me, listening and curiosity go together. And, you know, we're just past the new year, right? People have a word of the year. I haven't really done that per se, but man, if there's one word that seems to have come up a lot for me in the last few years is just stay curious. And when you're curious, then you become the 2-year-old who just continues asking questions. And when do we learn as humans? A ton in those early years, right? Because we aren't judgmental, we aren't certain that we know, we're questioning, we're curious, we're learning at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. That I would say it's curiosity in one word.
Yeah, I love that answer. And I love it described as a fork in the road, right? Because, you know, we're all listening at some point, right? That's how we process and take in information. But at what point do we stop, you know, listening because we're just so confident we don't need to learn more? And that curiosity allows a deferral of that fork in the road, if nothing else. So I love how you framed that. So yeah, you talked about, you know, assessing through listening and understanding, you know, what you're working with again, an individual or a team or a company. Um, you know, your style, even as you've described it so far, I'd imagine it's compatible with most people, because it's so open. But what do you do when it's not? What do you do when, you know, your style just doesn't seem compatible with a team or an individual? How do you address that situation?
Yeah, I don't remember. I think maybe one of my mentors is where I got this from years ago already, but it's just meet the learner where they're at. And it doesn't matter what I know, or it doesn't matter how quickly we need to solve that. Like, if that person doesn't learn and aren't able to make a positive difference or make an adjustment, then it's a failure in my eyes, right? So it's like I have to tailor my approach to meet them where they're at. And I think, for example, just problem solving methodologies, right? Whether it's 5Y, DMAIC, like those methodologies are different. The fundamentals are the same, right? I'm not going to come in and meet you and talk in one language when you already use another language, right? I have to adapt and talk your language. And usually that, I don't know, that softens those differences, and the communication and the collaboration works from there.
Yeah. All right.
Probably the one that's the hardest for me is another thing I say is just slow down, slow the learner down, right? We love to jump to conclusions. We want to go fast. a lot of great leaders have gotten a long ways and had great success because they have the knack or the intuition to make it those snap judgments. Those also can get them into a lot of trouble. So I think it's that's probably one that's the hardest for me, is people that are just running and gunning and they don't want to slow down, and where I would be encouraging them to slow down a little bit and understand the full consequences of the decisions and the direction that they're calling.
Yeah, sometimes one of the most popular lean books that wasn't written about lean was Thinking Fast and Slow. And, it's sometimes sometimes I think there's aspects in problem solving where the whole goal is to force us to think a little slower, go a little slower, in order to be more open, learn more, whatever that might be. And I really liked what you said about meeting them where they are. We were chatting a bit before we started recording about sort of the state of lean, and I think there's been a long history in lean sometimes of sort of people standing on the mountaintop saying, "This is where you should all be. This is what the pinnacle looks like. Come on up. The view is great." And people are at the bottom of the mountain, like, I don't see the path there. And so who's going to go meet them where they're at and take them on the next step? So I like that a lot. Now, all of what you described, throughout this whole conversation, it really expresses, I think, a very flexible, I'll say, dynamic approach to your work. That you're going to adjust, you're going to meet them where they are, you're going to listen, you're going to adjust, etc. That's every point you're making sort of fits into that persona of your flexibility in the moment and in the campaign, whatever that might be. So, do you have some things that you're not flexible on in problem solving, consulting, coaching? Like, here's my anchor, and this shall not, this will always be part of it, and then these are the places I adjust. Are you flexible about all of it? How do you decide, what to give and take in your sort of flexible approach?
Yeah. Yeah, good question. Because at the core, I have a lot of processes that I also follow that I would say are not flexible. But yeah, because they're proven ways to get results, right? So, but I think where we err is we stick so firmly to those, and sometimes it's not the right process, but we blindly keep following it, right? And then that's wrong. So I don't know. It's just like head up, eyes open, ears open. Like, be very aware and alert about your surroundings, and that will tell you when you detour from the main route or from the consistent process. One thing, though, that I will say a fundamental for me is the respect for people side of continuous improvement. And there's been a lot of talk and conversation about that. But man, at the end of the day, I have a fundamental belief, right, that we need to respect and value and take care of each other, and love one another like ourselves at the end of the day. So, like as consultants, right, we have clients we'll work for and clients we won't work for. That's an easy one for me, right? If you're going to disrespect for people or run people over, like, then I don't want to work with you. So yeah, I do have some fundamentals and some processes where I would say they are not flexible, but they're really principle based. I think the principles aren't flexible. How we go about from there, we need to be able to adjust.
Yeah, like that. So live your principles, start with standard process, never be a victim of your standard process, be listening, paying attention, and adjust as needed. Great approach. So we just got a minute left, and as you've shifted into consulting fairly recently, what's been maybe the biggest surprise or challenge in making that sort of career shift?
It's entrepreneurship, which is obviously new to me. I hadn't done this before, so that's probably the biggest challenge, the most learning, and the most rewarding. I don't know that was a surprise. I think what was a surprise though is I think like the word community, and I don't know, when you work for an organization and you spend a large part of your life with those people, that is your community. And that community is a lot different looking as a consultant, not working in an organization, but there's an absolute community there yet.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think the learning is that, and the fun has been the new communities that I've found myself in. And I think inherent to the nature of consulting, right? Each client is a community in itself, which has been just a lot of fun for me. Number one, just learning and understanding businesses are so unique and different. And there's unique and amazing people in all of them. And, in this role, you just have a unique way to see a lot of that many others don't. And I don't know, I just feel blessed and grateful for that opportunity.
Fantastic. Well, Scott, I appreciate you coming on to share your perspective, your story. I wish you and your clients all the success. And so thank you.
Yeah, great talking with you.